everyone, welcome back to Campus Convos. Joining me this week is President Avendano, President of Florida State College, Jacksonville. We spent quite a bit of time together at the AFIT organization at those conferences, which are fantastic. If you're a community college president out there, highly recommend you reach out and have a conversation with AFIT. Super innovative group, very focused on the future. Last trip, we were out looking at quantum computing, which is super interesting, and that's just kind of how they roll. So spent a bunch of time with President Avendano. They're a great customer of ours we've been working with for a little while now, and really glad to have him here today. So welcome, John.
Thank you, Dave. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for including me in your show.
No worries. So first off, what do you think is the most exciting technological thing at the moment affecting education? And what about the most exciting political, socioeconomic, something that's not technological?
Yeah, obviously, you can't have a conversation these days and talk about technology and not talk about artificial intelligence and not only the impact, obviously, on education, but the impact on really everything and everything that we do day in and day out. And so that is obviously the greatest advancement, if you will, as it relates to access to information and the ability to learn and the creating of a skill set that I think is going to become part of the future for everybody in no matter what you do in life.
Totally. Across the board, whether it's random things I do in day-to-day life at work, what we're seeing, universities, colleges, it's just going to change everything, really. It's one of those things that can't even really quite comprehend how much change it's going to create and bring. And if we think about outside of technology, what do you think the major trend is at the moment in education?
So I think, in education, again, there is a connection with artificial intelligence and technology and how it's impacting how we work and where we work and what we need to know for work, et cetera. We're seeing that demand also from employers these days, that AI literacy in our graduates and our students and people just in the community for that matter. And then, beyond that, obviously the social political arena. I'll speak more specifically from Florida's aspect, but then obviously I think there's components of the United States and other parts of the world that are experiencing this as well. But one of the things that we're noticing in Florida is really the kind of the migration into the Southeast, right? Whether it's weather related, climate related, but we are seeing amazing growth in the state of Florida and in the Southeast in general. So we're getting this group of people migrating to the Southeast, many of whom are coming from the Northeast, quite honestly, and some from the Midwest. And so we're seeing this shift of talent and access to talent. So as that connects to workforce development and people who would be working in our respective companies, we're seeing that happen as well. So, sociologically, economically, business and industry is looking to relocate into the Southeast and in the southern parts of the United States. Florida's being a perfect example of that. And then, but with that, they're bringing in these demands that say, we're looking for this workforce that has this AI literacy along with what we now kind of call these durable skills. We should call them the soft skills, but we kind of call them these durable skills in terms of communication and teamwork and leadership and things of that nature. So those are probably some of the biggest things that we're seeing happen in our region.
It's super interesting how quickly AI is being adopted in the workplace. Even a year ago, I feel like we weren't using it that much other than for searches and questions and whatnot. We're seeing particularly Claude Code, people building little apps to help them with their day-to-day jobs. Annabelle, she works in the content operations pricing team, and she's not an engineer. She's good with spreadsheets. She's analytical, but not an engineer. Built a little tool where she can check against our database whether a title's been QA'd or not. So little things like this that years ago would cost a bomb for an engineer to build, can be done. So super interesting stuff. And some of the employers, because I guess it ties in nicely to our next question. Obviously, you're in this fantastic region that's one of the most dynamic, obviously fastest growing in Florida. I love it. Reminds me a lot of Bunbury, where I grew up, like on the coast. You see dolphins, etc. Who are some of the key employers that are really growing in the area? And obviously, you kind of partnered with you guys.
Well, we are very much, we have a handful of different kind of sectors that are critical to the economy here. Healthcare is probably the biggest one that we have. We have a number of major hospitals. We have one of the 3 Mayo clinics in the United States. It's located here in Jacksonville. We have Baptist Medical Center, Brooks Rehabilitation Center. So we're very much a health community, health and wellness and medical community. So that's probably the largest sector from an employer standpoint that we're seeing. But we're starting to see a great growth in the tech field as well, both in financial institutions and fintech, right? Financial technologies here in our area. And some of, interestingly enough, are coming from overseas, and they're looking at Jacksonville to kind of establish their, their world headquarters here. So they're bringing that level of leadership here, but then they're also bringing that level of talent here. So kind of the fintech, the IT, again, AI type of base skill set that people are looking at. And the third, I think, is equally exciting is aviation. You know where we're kind of located here, Dave. We are in Northeast Florida, just south of the Georgia border in the United States, and we're seeing this huge uptick in aviation as well. So we have a new company coming into town called Holon. I'm sorry, Auto Aviation. Actually, Holon's another one. They're both coming here. But Auto Aviation is they're going to manufacture these planes that are, for the most part, purely autonomous, right? And the college, if you remember, we had already worked into this space of autonomous vehicles, right? More on the mass transportation side. So we have a handful, Jacksonville has a handful of autonomous vehicles that circulate some of the busier parts of the downtown area and transport people around as part of public transportation, right? So those are the sectors that we're seeing grow tremendously. So aviation, healthcare, fintech, financial institutions, and with that, some levels of manufacturing here as well. So those are the ones that I get knocking on my door saying we're looking for talent. We're looking for those who are committed to work, who have a variety of different skill sets, and they can put them to work.
It's such a dynamic place. I guess because I'd heard Florida had been attracting a lot of financial institutions, particularly since COVID, like some from New York and other areas. I guess these fintech companies maybe kind of attracted for similar reasons. Is there something regulatory? Obviously, there's great institutions, great talent. It attracts people, good weather. But like, what do you think's attracting these like financial or fintech institutions from other places?
Yeah, I think the infrastructure is here. First of all, I think that helps quite a bit, and it is, if you will, a desirable place to live. Even though in the months of July and August it can be very, very hot, and I mean very hot and humid. But one of the attractions, quite honestly, for a lot of people across the U.S. is, as it relates to Florida, is that there is no income tax, right? So depending, if you live in New York or if you live in Illinois or you live in California, you have an income tax that's significantly high. So a good portion of your money goes to the state as a result of that. Here, there is no income tax. So, you're immediately getting a 4, 5, 7% increase. You get to keep 4, 5, 7% of your paycheck all the time. So I think that's a major attraction to the state of Florida. Again, regulatory, we are a kind of a work-friendly state. And then again, like I said, I spoke to the fact that we are a desirable place to live. The weather, the climate here is great. In Northeast Florida, I like the fact that it is the northern part of Florida. and the fact, so we do have some a little bit of cooling, if you will, in the months of December, January, and February, which, and for here, for Florida, you're looking at maybe 50-degree weather and 60-degree weather, which some Floridians will call, oh, they're freezing, they're cold here, right? I say that jokingly because I come from the Chicagoland area, right? I come from
Chicago,
Chicago.
yeah.
So, yeah, so I usually tell them, I said, I can tell you what cold is. This is not cold. It's actually really killing me. So again, the climate, and it's a beautiful area. We really
It is, yeah.
we're on the Atlantic Ocean. We have the St. Johns River that runs really right through the city of Jacksonville. And as you experienced, I think
Yeah.
when we had a fit here a year ago, it would have been a year ago this time, you go down along the St. Johns River and you see, dolphins that are dancing around in the river. And again, very much a marine life that's attractive to the area.
And the view from that building where you have the club access for guests, etc., the
Yeah,
board
yeah,
donors, such an amazing view. So many tall buildings in the world. You look out and you just look at another tall building, but from there you can see basically the ocean, obviously the river.
sure.
It's amazing, yeah. And yeah, in terms of the weather, totally. I mean, I'm from Australia originally, so it's quite a hot place, but it's dry, and the ocean generally stays fairly cool. But I had this experience, not Jacksonville, but down the Southwest. We work with Florida
Sure.
Southwestern as well, and went for a swim in July in the ocean. And honestly, I felt like the water was hotter than the air. Like it was like dipping into a jacuzzi, and I've never had that experience in the ocean or sea anywhere in the world before. It's
Right.
quite interesting. But yeah, like you say, I think people like warmth in general, so that's clearly quite
Yeah.
attractive.
The the water on the Gulf side is definitely much warmer than what you find here on the Atlantic side. So,
Yes,
Florida, for the most part, it's almost an entire beach, right? I mean, the beaches
yeah.
surround the entire state. And, but yeah, you'll definitely find a warmer climate or warmer water over on the Gulf side than you do on the Atlantic side.
I guess, like you were saying, because like Jacksonville is northeast in general, I guess you're a bit cooler, like air temperature, day
Exactly.
temperature than the southwest. But yeah, and a bit of a side question, but I'd always heard this kind of, I guess it's like a saying that if the state has no income tax, generally its property taxes are much higher. Is that true in Florida, or you think like net when people move there, they're generally paying less tax than other states?
My only point of comparison was coming from Illinois, and even on the property tax side, it is significantly lower here. Now, I will also qualify that by saying maybe the acreage of where a home sits might be a little bit smaller, but still the cost, if you will, is significantly lower as well. As an example, where I came from in Illinois, we had just shy of a 1 acre lot, and we were paying probably close to about $9,000 in property tax a year. And here I have maybe a little over a half an acre of a lot, and I know I'm paying less than $2,500 a year. So
Wow.
you're saving a lot of money in a lot of different ways, right? We do get
Yeah.
the one thing about Florida is a lot of our revenue comes from tourism, and not just Disney. I mean, people love Disney, et cetera. But we do have a lot of other amusement parks. We have, like I said, the state of Florida, for the most part, is also, with the exception of the northern strip, it's surrounded by beaches, right? So
Yeah,
people
yeah.
love coming down, and a lot of the development you see along the beachfront property, and just some beautiful places.
And the state has a special tax on theme park entry and hotels and this kind of thing.
It does.
Okay, fine. So that helps kind of balance out the picture a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So on hotels, for example, what we would call it is kind of a bed tax, or kind of
Yeah.
heads and beds, and that's obviously made from tourism, and so that's how we're also able to do a lot of things locally in the community. A perfect example for that in Jacksonville, our Visit Jax, which is kind of our convention and visitors bureau, if you will. They're able to hold a series of large events and help promote that because of the people that come in and stay in our hotels, not only along the beachfront, but along the riverfront and a number of other areas here, just in the Jacksonville, the Northeast Florida area. So that's another source of revenue that comes into our area.
Yeah, yeah. Interesting. Yeah, it's quite a diverse economy in that sense. I mean, obviously, you're talking about tourism, but you'd previously mentioned like a whole different swathe of types of businesses. It's an interesting place, yeah. And then you've got the space stuff a bit further south. I guess it's sort of like in Central Florida somewhere, but also pretty interesting stuff
Yeah,
happening down there.
Cape Canaveral is down on the
Yeah.
eastern coast of Florida. But interestingly enough, David, like I'd mentioned, there's a lot of interest. There's no more room, as I understand it, at Cape Canaveral in that area for the space program, right? And so there's a lot of interest right now in Jacksonville because of its weather, because of its proximity to the ocean, and the minimizing of really homes. I'll put it that way, homes and businesses. So as rockets either launch vertically or horizontally, it's kind of a safer area that is attracting the space industry into this area. So that's
Right.
that's an area that we're looking at very significantly, seriously here in our area. You know, a lot of those, obviously, yeah, the astronauts will probably come from NASA, but the building of the ships and the technologies and the engineers will come from, the University of Florida and our institutions in Northeast Florida. So we're excited about that possibility. And I think we would see something here in the next 5 to 10 years.
Really? So you think there'll be permanent launch sites potentially there?
I think that there could be. We have Cecil
Wow.
Center, which we actually have a presence at.
Yeah.
We have a campus there. Does have, and this would be more for horizontal type launches, right? As they would take off on a runway. Because we have very long runways at Cecil Center. It's a former military base here in the Jacksonville area.
And I hadn't really heard of these horizontal launches. The horizontal launch will be able to get satellites into orbit and this kind of thing as well.
I will leave that to the experts who launched, to Elon and those guys who like to put satellites out there. And but
Lots of them too.
I think it has attracted a lot of people who have that interest, if you will.
Fascinating. Yeah, I have to look up. I've never heard of the horizontal launch. There was an entrepreneur I met here recently who'd come up with the idea of like launching a satellite with solar panels, but rather than like powering a data center in space, beaming the power back down to Earth. So lots of pretty cool stuff happening in space that 5-10 years ago I would have never foreseen. I mean, I guess this is how technology works. I would have never foreseen LLMs like 5 years ago either. Sometimes it surprises you, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. And yeah, so like we think about all of these really interesting employment opportunities and parts of the economy. Obviously, many students are balancing work, family, financial pressures, and this kind of thing. What can community college do to, ensure these students have access to what they need, have good student success, and obviously without losing the human connection too?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Not to give a history lesson, but that's really what was the establishment, how community colleges first began, right? In 1901 with Joliet Junior College in Illinois. I actually grew up in the community adjacent to that. But the whole idea was to provide access to affordable quality education. So, I mean, that's really the mission of the local community college, not just in Florida, but across the entire country. And it really is to kind of provide access to everybody. And the reality is that the majority of our students are the non-traditional students, right? I think you go to any community college across the country, they're going to tell you that the average age is 27, 28, 29 years old. It's adults returning to making a career change and looking to other areas. And so we were designed to provide that access. And for those not familiar with Jacksonville in the United States is the largest landmass in the United States. So it's the largest city. It's a consolidated city. And so we're like 890 square miles around, and you're still in Jacksonville. You can drive 45 minutes in one direction and still be in the city of Jacksonville. That said, we have multiple locations in Jacksonville. We have 4 different campuses. We have 3 different centers. And then we also you utilize 2 academies as well. So um, from a proximity standpoint, we have covered the access standpoint. Now, with that, we've also added a very robust offering in terms of online learning and hybrid options and asynchronous classes that students can take. So all built around the idea of providing access. The key then is to make sure that we're providing the wraparound services and the things that students need to be successful, right? And utilizing different technologies so that students can achieve the goals that they set out to accomplish. Whether it's a technical certificate, whether it's an associate's degree. The one nice thing about Florida is we do have the authority to offer baccalaureate degrees, bachelor's degrees, which is not true in some other states for community colleges. We are able to run that gamut of technical certificates, associate degrees, and the bachelor's degree here, but all still maintaining our main mission and purpose to provide access to quality education throughout our district.
Yeah, yeah, it's a very unique size, your institution, really, isn't it? One of the largest in the country. And following up from that, we talked a bit about AI and its impact. If we fast forward like 5 to 10 years, what do you think the courses are going to look like in terms of, where are we going to see more jobs, maybe where we're going to see less jobs? But and I guess a slightly separate question. How do you see AI being used in the course? Will it be something that's not allowed to be used for assessments and exams, or will it at some point be allowed to use as a tool for assessments and exams, and maybe have to change the way we assess and examine? So yeah, interested to hear your perspective on that as well.
In my mind, there's 2 parts to that question, right? The one is which career opportunities would be augmented by AI, right? But are still, for lack of a better word, immune to AI, meaning that, in fact, if you see our most recent marketing strategy, it's called be or become irreplaceable, right? Or be irreplaceable, which actually won the national award this past year by NCMPR. And the become irreplaceable is there are these career options, career tracks that are augmented by AI. So, for example, if you are a first responder, if you are an EMT, if you are in healthcare, if you're a nurse, your job's not going to be replaced by AI. It's going to be augmented. You're going to learn things from AI that can help you working with patients, or help you working with different people or different jobs in the community, but it's not going to necessarily replace you. To your other question, and that is, how do we then utilize AI as a tool for continued expanded learning and tutoring and understanding things more deeply? I think that's where the benefit's going to come from. And those who utilize AI, who effectively can do that and understand not only the ethical component of that, but the realistic component of that, are the people who are going to really benefit. So, what do I mean by that? I said earlier, there are, business and industry and CEOs are asking, are they coming out with this particular skill set? Are your graduates going to have this kind of gen ed, if you will, experience of how to utilize AI? Because for business and industry, they're always going to look to see how do they make their companies more efficient, more effective, and really, quite honestly, more profitable. And if they bring somebody in with that extra level of skill set, that's going to be much more attractive to them. So we would not be in a good position to kind of reject the idea that we're not going to utilize AI. We just need to find what's the best way to do that. I think another component of that is that why it's going to be more important for students of any age, right? But students to really think critically about what they're exploring, what they're researching, and how they're going about their studies. Because they want to, as people always say, you always want to fact check, the whatever Chat GPT gives you. You want to fact check it because it doesn't make sense, right? It doesn't make sense from a critical thinking standpoint. If you were to plug in something, how long does it take to walk across the Atlantic Ocean? And it gives you an answer because it needs to give you an answer. The reality is, can you walk across the Atlantic Ocean? And so it doesn't make sense. If it doesn't make sense, that's where the critical thinking is going to come into play. The people can really kind of verify what they're seeing and be able to provide better answers, more thoughtful responses, and as they go about their day-to-day jobs.
I think you're right. There's an element here because people always think about, AI changing the way things are happening, or I guess new companies being created. But I think a big part of it is just like people getting more efficient and companies trying to be more profitable and stuff like this, which essentially becomes a tool, a bit like a computer or something like that. So,
Exactly.
you know,
Exactly.
an opportunity. Yeah. Well, John, really appreciate you jumping on today. Everyone that's listening, we appreciate you all. Don't forget to subscribe or like, and we look forward to hearing from you next time.